We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we found this interesting article online. It's quite an old article, but it's been updated, we believe, on Sunday, April 6, 2025. It looks very interesting. Whether it's true or not, we will have to look into it for more details to verify it is. And it reads, Hangover cures plays about Moses and a doctor's report on a drowned slave girl. Long lost papyrus scraps reveal life in Egypt 2,000 years ago. 2,000 or more years ago. 500,000 documents found at ancient Egyptian city of Oxyrhynchus in 1897. Project has enlisted some online volunteers to help translate papyrus texts. Texts include a play about Moses and doctor's notes about a drowning. They also feature an ancient cure for a so-called drunk headache. It might be like the hair of the dog or something. A long lost speech from a play about Moses has been discovered on newly translated papers found more than 100 years ago on an ancient Egyptian rubbish pile. The speech explains how he was given the name Moses, or Moses was given the name Moses, because he was found on the river bank, written in a Greek-style tragedy about the biblical character written in the 2nd century BC. It means that the classical biblical story would have been performed more than 2,000 years before Charlton Heston played Moses in the 1956 blockbuster The Ten Commandments. And we remember a article on Charlton Heston supposedly going into a local village or town to get some fruit or vegetables or something like that, when he had a break, and it's all dressed up as Moses, and these Mohammedans or Muslims actually thought he was Moses returned. He was possibly doing Planet of the Apes at the same time. As far as I remember, he was doing 2 movies at that particular time. Volunteers studying a series of discarded texts from ancient Egypt have helped uncover a speech by Moses in an original play about the character written in the 2nd century BC. Pictured. It had been quoted in other documents by Church Father Eusebius, written 400 years later, but until now no one had ever seen it. It is one of 500,000 documents found when the Victorian archaeologists Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt discovered the ancient city of Oxyrhynchus, about 120 miles south of modern Cairo, in 1897. Between then and 2012, only 5,000 had been translated, but thousands more have been translated thanks to an army of volunteers who have inspected the documents which are put online. So we're asking, who were these two? So I had a look online. Not that much information on them, but Bernard Pine Grenfell, FBA, Fellowship of the British Academy member, 16 December 1869, died 18 May 1926, was an English scientist and Egyptologist. Egyptology is the scientific study of ancient Egypt. The topics studied include ancient Egyptian history, language, literature, religion, architecture, and art from the 5th millennium BC until the end of its native religious practices in the 4th century. It'll probably be 4th century AD. Excavations he did with Arthur Surridge Hunt, also a fellow, was an English papyrologist. So he looked at Egyptian papyruses, etc., translated those, and so forth. They uncovered manuscripts, including the oldest papyri, which were a group of manuscripts discovered during the late 19th and early 20th centuries by papyrologists Bernard Pine Grenfell and Arthur Surridge Hunt at an ancient rubbish dump near Oxyrhynchus in Egypt. And it's the life about Bernard Pine Grenfell. With his friend and colleague Arthur Surridge, he took part in the archaeological dig at Oxyrhynchus, also named known by its modern name Al-Ba-Nasa, a city in Middle Egypt located about 160 kilometers southwest of Cairo in Minya Governorate. It's also an important archaeological site, and it's been excavated since the beginning of the 19th century, etc. And so they found this papyri, including some of the oldest known copies of the New Testament and Septuagint. Other notable finds are extensive, including previously unknown works by known classical authors. The majority of the find consists of thousands of documentary texts. Parabiblical material, such as copies of the Old Logia, or words of Jesus, were also found. The term logia, plural of logion, is used variously in ancient writings and modern scholarship in reference to communications of divine origin. In pagan contexts, the principal meaning was oracles, while Jewish and Christian writings used logio in reference especially to the divine, right? Or the Christ, or the Word. In 1895, Grenfell and Hunt were the first archaeologists to explore the site of Karanis, located in what is now Kom Aushim, which was an agricultural town in Ptolemaic and Roman Egypt, located in the northeast corner of the Fayum oasis. It was roughly 60 hectares in size, and its peak population was estimated to be 4,000 people, or that could have been more. Present Kom Aushim in Fayum, a city in the Middle East, located 100 kilometers southwest of Cairo in the Fayum oasis. It is the capital of the modern Fayum government. It is one of Egypt's oldest cities due to its strategic location. It goes on about his mother, his life history. He became a professor in 1908 of papyrology, the study of manuscripts of ancient literature, correspondence, legal archives, etc., preserved on portable media such as papyrus, etc., from antiquity, the most common form of which is papyrus, the principal writing material in the ancient civilization of Egypt, and so forth. So he became a professor at Oxford and was part of the editing team of the Oxyrhynchus Papyri and other similar works. However, he was ill for 4 years, and during that time the professorship lapsed. Grenfell was cared for by his mother, and he had recovered in 1913. In 1920 he travelled to Egypt for the last time in his life and bought P.Ryl, the Rylands Papyri, a collection of thousands of papyrus fragments and documents from North Africa and Greece, housed at the John Rylands University Library, Manchester, UK. The collection includes the Rylands Library Papyrus P52. That may be the one that Bart D. Ullman was talking about. You have this small fragment of text, or this P52, supposedly in the Greek, and it's so small it's like the size of your SIM card for your cell phone, for your mobile phone, your portable mobile phone. 3457, and the Rylands Library Papyrus P52, also known as a St. John's fragment, and with an accession reference of Papyrus Rylands Greek 457, is a fragment from a papyrus codex, measuring only 3.5 by 2.5 inches at its widest, and conserved with the Rylands Papyri at the John Rylands. Museum, probably. The earliest surviving witness of the Greek New Testament. The New Testament papyrus is a copy of a portion of the New Testament made on papyrus. To date, over 140 such papyri are known. In general, they are considered the earliest witnesses to the original text of the New Testament. In the Greek, probably. This person died on 18th of May 1926 and was buried in Holywell Cemetery, Oxford, obviously in England. And there's his publications, and he's also got this papyrus revenue laws, well, something about that there, references and external links. So now we're going to have a look at his co-partner in that particular venture, his partner, Arthur Surridge Hunt, FBA, another fellow, born 1st of March 1871, died 18th of June 1934, was an English papyrologist, and he's born in Romford, Essex, England, and so forth. He became in 1930, he became Professor of Papyrology at Oxford, succeeding to his lifelong friend and colleague Grenfell, Bernard Pine Grenfell, whose professorship lapsed due to the latter's breakdowns and depression. In January 1918, he married Lucy Allen, daughter of Surgeon Major General Sir A.F. Bradshaw, but during the next few months the only child died. Here's his awards: appointed correspondent fellow of the British Academy, 1894, elected to the Craven Fellowship, and this looks like his books. You can also see Oxyrhynchus, 2011. There's references, sources, external links, and bibliography. The Oxyrhynchus, whatever it's called, Oxyrhynchus Papyri, edited with translations and notes by Bernard P. Grenfell and Arthur S. Hunt, Cornell University Library Historical Monographs Collection, reprinted by Cornell University Library Digital Collections. Also discovered by the Ancient Lives Project was a transcript from known playwright Euripides' lost play Andromeda, a tragedy first produced in 417 BC. There is additionally a doctor's note from the 3rd century AD describing the twisted and lifeless body of a drowned slave girl. But the most interesting to many will be the fragment of a long-lost rendition of the Book of Exodus, written in the style of a Greek tragedy by a little-known author called Ezekiel. So it's not the Ezekiel of the Bible, the Old Testament, right? This papyrus is an example of text found at Oxyrhynchus and featured exclusive elements of geometry. It is one of 500,000 documents found by Victorian archaeologists Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt in 1897. Pictured. The documents were discovered at the ancient town of Oxyrhynchus in Egypt, around 120 miles, 193 kilometers, from Cairo in 1896, which is marked on this map, the world map on the globe there. So it's there. Hundreds of thousands of texts written on papyrus were found at Oxyrhynchus during the excavation, as shown above. It had been quoted in other documents by Church Father Eusebius, written 400 years later, but until now no one had ever seen it. Dr. Dirk Oddbink of Oxford University, coordinating the project, said, We didn't know for certain that a text existed. Eusebius might have made it up or misremembered it, reports the Independent, yet, because there's been reports that by top theologians, etc., that this guy exaggerated and lied quite a lot. Now we have a real copy, a long speech by Moses in iambic trimeters, telling the history of his life and how he was discovered as a baby in the bulrushes. We can put some flesh and bones on a lost work of literature, one that was presumably performed long before Charlton Heston. So this would verify that Moses was a real character, that the Bible isn't lying. Okay, it's not a made-up fairy tale. Other discoveries made since the ancient project began include the original cure for hangover, along with 24 other ancient medical texts published for the first time prior to this article being written and put up online. Written in Greek, One of the medical recipes offers advice for how to tackle a drunken headache with the leaves of a shrub called Alexandrian Champadaphne, or sometimes Alexandria laurel. The text recommends stringing the leaves of the evergreen plant, also called Ruscus racemosus, together and possibly wearing it around the neck. Workers for the Ancient Lives have uploaded hundreds of thousands of images of Greek papyri fragments online. The ancient Hangover cure. And this Charlton Heston playing the role of Moses. Is that real Hebrew, etc., or is this just like Hollywood Hebrew or Hollywood Greek or something like that, right? It is evidence that a play about the biblical character will have been performed more than 2,000 years before Charlton Heston played him in 1956 movie The Ten Commandments. This is supposed to be the papyrus here, fragments. The papyrus was found in Oxyrhynchus, Egypt, and contains a medical recipe for treating a hangover. The text recommends stringing the leaves of the evergreen plant, also called Ruscus racemosus, together and possibly wearing it around the neck. On the website, pattern recognition tools will help people match the letters to symbols. It then translates the words and stores them into a huge database. Excited scholars say among their segments they have found fragments of what they believe is a lost gospel with stories about Jesus. So they'll become another one of those Gnostic lost gospels, supposedly, we're guessing. They have also found letters, documents, receipts and gossip that date from 500 BC and AD 1000, which they say will help them open up a window into the ancient lives of Greco-Roman Egypt. Another project leader, Dr. Chris Lintott of Oxford University's Department of Physics, explained how the treasure trove was discovered and very nearly destroyed. In 1896, students Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt were trekking across Egypt when they came to the city of Oxyrhynchus, the city of the sharp-nosed fish, and they discovered a rubbish tip, he said. Clearly, some people were very good at recycling, as they found so many letters that in some places they had to dig 25 feet deep for them. They dug for the papyri by hand, and at one stage were paying locals by the piece they discovered, so some larger pieces were ripped up, because the more you had, the more you got paid, right? They also had to save it from people who wanted to use it for agricultural purposes, as papyrus is so good for composting. After a decade they brought them all back, but after 100 years they had gone through about 2%, so they thought it was time they called in some help. The texts were written in Greek during a period when Egypt was under the control of a Greek and later Roman settler class. There was one of those emperors, maybe Augustus, that made it his home away from home. He could get away from Rome, and he had his own little palace, etc., set up there, so he could do that. Many of the papyri had not been read for over 1,000 years. Here's some information here about the importance of Oxyrhynchus. The newly translated papyri are from the 500,000 documents found when the Victorian archaeologist Bernard Grenfell left and Arthur Hunt discovered them. Only 5,000 of the 500,000 found during the excavation period were translated by 2012, but the Ancient Lives project has led to the translation of hundreds more. Dr. Lintott said already the scholars had unearthed a variety of fascinating insights into everyday life in Egypt, in that location. We've already discovered this tiny fragment of what appears to be a lost gospel, he said. We've also got a very formal letter from a 14-year-old boy telling his father unless he was allowed to go to the big city of Alexandria, he was not going to eat or drink. So it shows some things never change, including teenagers. Stubborn, rebellious, determined, etc., to get their own way. Members of the public can help the team, made up of the between Oxford University papyrologists, the Egypt Exploration Society, and a team in Oxford University's Department of Physics. The physics department built the Citizen Science Project that allows anyone to make an authentic contribution to research. The scholars believe that they need on average between 3 and 5 people to look at each fragment and transcribe it, and the majority's answer will be taken to weed out any individual anomalies or mistakes. Dr. Lintott said, "We've worked on this site so you don't need to know Greek. The volunteer can look at letters and then website will suggest words." Lead developer and designer William McFarlane of Oxford University's Department of Physics said, "It's with the digital advancements of our own age that we're able to open up this window into the past and see a common human experience in that intimate, traditional medium, handwriting, or known as handwriting." They're able to open up this window into the past and see a common human experience in that intimate, traditional medium, handwriting. Discovering new texts is always exciting, said team papyrologist Dr. James Brucelas. But the fact that you're reading a piece of literature or a private letter that hasn't been read in over 1,000 years or more, that's what I like about papyrology. The new fragment of Ezekiel's exegoge. It's not Ezekiel from the Bible, right? Or maybe it is. No, we don't think. According to this article, it's a later person, right? And this was spoken by Moses. Among the fragments was a long-lost rendition of the book of Exodus, written in the style of a Greek tragedy by an author called Ezekiel. So it could be for real, or it could be totally pseudo. Apocrypha, right? Not actually true. But with that, you could possibly find out who the author is and not know how old that is, but it looks like through this article maybe they know both of that, so it'll be a genuine thing. A translated extract reads, "Then the princess with her maidservants came down to bathe." It's the daughter of the king, right, the Pharaoh. "When she saw me, she took me up and recognized that I was a Hebrew." This is Moses talking, right? Telling her what went on. Telling someone what went on. "My sister Mariam then ran up to her and spoke." We know her in the Americanized Bible versions, English version, as Miriam. "Shall I get a nursemaid for this child from the Hebrews?" The princess urged her on. Mariam went to fetch our mother, or their mother, who presently appeared and took her in her arms. The princess said to her, "Woman, nurse this child and I shall pay your wages." She then named him Moses, or named me Moses, him Moses, because she had taken him from the watery riverbank. So that sounds very interesting. Importance of Oxyrhynchus. It lies southwest of Cairo and is considered to be one of the most important archaeological sites in Egypt. It has yielded a huge collection of papyrus texts from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods of Egyptian history, and among them are fragments of plays and the Gospel of Thomas. The city was built around a system of canals, and inhabitants dumped their rubbish at nearby sand hills, including lots of written material, as Oxyrhynchus was governed bureaucratically by the Greeks and the Romans. Archaeologists have discovered tax returns, census material, receipts, letters about religion, politics, military action, and diaries, giving them a thorough picture of everyday life. In 1896, 2 young excavators, Bernard Grenfell and Arthur Hunt, from the University of Oxford, began to excavate the site and combed through the rubbish. While they were concerned with finding works of high literature, they realised the importance of the discarded everyday material. Some 500,000 papyrus fragments are now kept at the university's Sackler Library, among them the account of match fixing. So if you found this article very interesting and you really liked it, give us a like with a thumbs up for bringing it to you. Subscribe to our channel, add your comments below this video, and then go share this information, this video and this information with all you know, your family, friends, neighbours etc. This basically verifies that Moses was a real person way back in the days, the Moses of the book of Exodus in the Bible.